Buddha. Morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming. We have today we're doing our continuing our Ngöndro practice, but today we're going to include the Vajrasattva purification practice. So with the Ngöndro, we begin with the refuge prostration. We will go through that and do just 3 prostrations. You can do more when you're doing it on your own, but for today we'll just do 3, and then we'll continue on to the next part, the explanations that we'll go through for the Vajrasattva part. So to begin, we all do our 3 prostrations. So please, in front of your shrine, do the 3 prostrations. Om Ahom, body, speech, and mind. And the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Om Ahom, body, speech, and mind. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Body, speech, and mind. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Om Ahom, body, speech, and mind. Om Ahom. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Om Ahom, body, speech, and mind. Om Ahom. So Matthew, will you begin on page 2 and do the opening prayers? Everybody mute your microphones and join along with Matthew reading out loud and meaningfully. Thank you.
All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dang warje pedra no parje peke. Tarpa dang tam shekin pe bardu cho parje pa tam sheki so je pe. Manam kadang nyam pe sim chin tam she de wa dang den. Dug now dang drill nor du la na me pa yang dag par zog pe shang shu rimpo she to par ja. Until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Deshe du sang ma ge gi ba du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she ba du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma song ta sam gi ba du na lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. All sentient beings, limitless as the sky, take refuge in the glorious, kind Lama Vajradhara, the embodiment of the body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities of the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, source of the 84,000 categories of the teachings, and Lord of the Sanghas. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yadams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. All sentient beings, limitless as the sky, take refuge in the glorious, kind Lama Vajradhara, the embodiment of the body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities of the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, source of the 84,000 categories of the teachings and Lord of the Sanghas. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yadams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Nam ke tang dang nyam pe sem chen tam she chok chu du sam gi de shin shek pa tam she ki ku sung tu yon ten trin le tam she ki no war jor pa cho ki pong po tong trag ya chu sai she jong ne Pag pe ge dun tam she ki nag dag drin sen sa wa dang yu par che pe pao den la ma dam pa nam la kyap su chi yo ye dam kyo korgi la so nam la kyap su chi yo sang ye chom den de nam la kyap su chi yo dam pe cho nam la kyap su chi yo Pag pe ge dun nam la kyap su chi yo Pa wo ka dro cho kyung song me song ye she ki chen dang den pa nam la kyap su chi yo. Cultivating the mind of enlightenment. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shang Shu Ning Por Chi Ki Bar Sangye Nam La Kyap Su Chi Chodang Shang Shu Senpai Song Lang De Shin Kyap Su Chi Jitar Nongi De Sheki Shang Shu Tuk Ni Ke Padang Shang Shu Sempe La Pala De Dag Rim Shin Ne Patar De Shin Dro La Pendondo Shang Shu Sem Ni Ke Gijin De Shin Du Ni La Pala Rimpa Shindu La Pajio. Short Refuge Prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chognam La Shangshu Bardu Dagni Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinsugi Pe Sunam Ki Drola Penshir Sangye Drupasho. The Four Immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering in the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering in the causes of suffering. May may they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadang nyam pesim chintam she de wadang de we gudang den parjorchi. Dug now gi gudang draw war jorchi. Dug now me pe de wadang mi draw war jorchi. Ne ring chak dang ni dang draw we tong nyam la ne pa jorchi. Seven Limb Prayer. Whatever merit I have gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, requesting, and praying, for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. Shang Sao Wa Dang Cho Jing Shag Pa Dang Jesu Yirang Kul Shig So Wa Yi Ge Wa Chung Ze Da Gi Chi Sag Pa Tam She So Pe Shang Shu Shir Nong Ho. And for are we gonna go through the 4 ways of turning the mind, or do you want me to recite that
Yeah,
as
I'll
well?
do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we resume on page 12 with the 4 ways of turning the mind to the Dharma. So first we recite the first line, which says, "Oh, this kind of leisure and endowment is supremely difficult to obtain. When we obtain this body, which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain the ultimate liberation, joyous result." So contemplate precious human life. We have this precious human life. The 8 leisures and the 10 endowments. Contemplate. Okay, next is number 2. The nature of all phenomena is impermanence. Death is a certainty to all who are born. Death can descend any time like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. Quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. Contemplate on the meaning of impermanence and think about the 8 worldly concerns and how our minds are consumed with these 8 worldly concerns, and we must be able to control our mind to be able to transcend these 8 worldly concerns and be able to concentrate and to be able to live in the realm of our Buddha nature, our true nature. So contemplate on impermanence. Okay. Number 3, the fruits of one's positive karma is happiness. Suffering is the fruit of negative karma. The inexorable karmic causation is the mode of abiding of all dharmas. Henceforth, practice the dharma by distinguishing between what should be practiced and what should be given up. So contemplate the meaning of karma, cause and result. Okay, the fourth of the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. In the three lower realms, and even in the three higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So contemplate the meaning of the suffering of samsara. If your mind wanders on this topic or any of the other topics, just come right back, open your eyes, and read the text and contemplate the meaning of the suffering of samsara. Okay. Does anyone have any comments or questions about the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma? Okay. These are four reasons why we are engaged in the study and the practices of the Dharma. So we refresh our memory each time we do these sessions to remind ourselves of why it is that we are on this path. So now we visualize the protection circle and we recite the Sanskrit alphabet mantra. Oma, I, U, Vi, Li, O, Ang, A, Kaka, Gagana, Zaza, Zazana, Tata, Dadana, Tata, Dadana, Papa, Babama, Yavalava, Sa, Ka, Saha, Kriya, Soha. Oma, I, U, Vi, Li, O, Ang, A, Kaka, Gagana, Zaza, Zazana, Tata, Dadana, Tata, Dadana, Papa babama yawalawa sa saha kriya soha. Oma ii vivi lili o ang kaka gagana zaza zazana tata dadana papa babama yawalawa sa saha kriya soha. The mantra of interdependent origination, page 17. Om Yadharma, Hetu Prabhava, Hetu Takan Tadagato, Heawa Tatata, Takansa, Yonarada, Evamwadi, Mahashamani, Soha. Om Yadharma, Hetu Prabhava, Hetu Takan Tadagato, Heawa Tatata, Takansa, Yonarada, Evamwadi, Mahashamani, Soha. Om Yadharma, Hetu Prabhava, Hetu Takan Tadagato, Heawa Tatata, Takansa, Yonarada, Evamwadi, Mahashamani, Soha. In English, all phenomena arise from causes. Those causes have been taught by the Tathagata. The cessation, too, has been proclaimed by the great ascetic, the Shramaniye, so be it. And next is the 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva. We'll recite once in English and 3 times in the Sanskrit. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhung Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Sattvaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhung Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Sattvaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhung Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Sattvaha. The increasing mantras for the practice. Om Sambar Sambar Bimanasar Mahazamba Hung. Om Sambar Sambar Bimanasar Mahazamba Hung. Om Sambar Sambar Bimanasara Ma Zamba 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 Hung. Arising from a defiled mind, be reborn into great wisdom. Om Smar Smar Bhimanaskar Mahazamba Hung Pe. 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 Om Smar Smar Bhimanaskar Ma Zamba Hung Pe. Arising from defiled lives, remember and purify the flower of wisdom. Om Sambar Sambar Mahazambu Hung Pe. 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 Arising great holy wisdom, purify this life. With your beads, the mala bead blessing. Om Richi Ramana Prarataya Hong Pe. 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 The enlightened body, speech, and mind of the precious Dharma protectors, whose mirror-like wisdom is the door to purification. Om Re Pamanurti Shvari Hung. 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 The body, speech, and mind of pure love is the ultimate wisdom. Om Ah Hung, 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 Om Ah Hung Uma 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 aho. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about any of the prayers that we just recited? No question is a meaningless question. So if you're not sure of anything that we talked about, now's the time to talk about it. Okay. now the practice of taking refuge. So we go through this quickly. So we begin with one pointed mind, take refuge in the three jewels. So sit in the proper meditation position and take refuge in the three jewels, the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Visualize a white at the forehead, a red Ah at the throat, and a blue Hung at the heart. Okay, then we recite on page 25 in English. Meditate the surroundings as inseparable from a Buddha field. In the space in front of me is a lion throne on which are a lotus, sun, and moon disk seat, in the center of which sits the kind root Lama in the form of Vajradhara with the 7 characteristics. Blue in color, 2 arms, holding a Vajra and bell crossed at the heart and gracefully sitting in the Vajra position. Adorned with the silken robes and various precious jewel ornaments, surrounded by all the lineage lamas. In front of the lion throne is the Yilam Shakasamvara, male and female aspects in union, whose manifestation is simultaneously appearance and emptiness. At the right side of the throne is the assembly of the Buddhas of the 3 times, possessing all the auspicious signs of a Buddha, together with the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate kalpa. Behind the throne is the Prajnaparamita, proclaiming the relative and ultimate meaning of the 3 yanas. To the left of the throne is the assembly of the compassionate bodhisattvas, surrounded by the Sangha of the 3 yanas. Around the base of the throne are the Dharmapalas, an ocean of guardians gathered like clouds. We recite the refuge prayer. Buddhas, Dharma, Sanghas, Yidams, and Dharma protectors, to these supreme objects of refuge, for protection from the hordes of suffering of samsara, we all migrators go for refuge until enlightenment is attained. Buddhas, Dharmas, Sanghas, Yidams, and Dharma protectors, to these supreme objects of refuge, for protection from the hordes of suffering of samsara, we all migrators go for refuge until enlightenment is attained. Sangye choso yedam chokyong che, kyab chog nam la dak sok jowakun. Si pe jik sog nam da le kyob chir, chang shu ma to badu kyab su chi. I rejoice when all sentient beings are happy and free from the samsaric suffering and swiftly attain ultimate Buddhahood. For this purpose, from now on until I achieve enlightenment, I will follow the path to the ultimate goal. I rejoice when all sentient beings are happy and free from the samsaric suffering and swiftly attain ultimate Buddhahood. For this purpose, from now on until I achieve enlightenment, I will follow the path to the ultimate goal. Jokun de den dugnal dag drel wadan, nor du la me topar dagawe. De chir den ne chang su ma tobar. Ne pe don chog lam la jog parja. So now we do 3 prostrations, full body prostrations or the short prostrations or just standing and bowing, whatever is you're capable of doing. We do the three prostrations, and we'll recite the refuge prayer as it's listed here, page 30 and 31. So we'll do it in the once in the English and twice in the Tibetan. We go for refuge to the glorious Holy Lama together with the kind root and lineage Lama. We go for refuge to the deities, to the mandalas of the yidams. We go for refuge to all the exalted Buddhas. We go for refuge to the perfect Dharma. We go for refuge to the excellent order of the Sanghas. We go for refuge to all the Dakas, Dakinis, male and female, Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Drinsen sa wa dan gerpa jepe pal dan lama dan pa nam la kap su chiyo. Yidam kilgor gila sok nam la kap su chiyo. Sange chom dende nam la kap su chiyo. Dan petro nam la kap su chiyo. Pepege du nam la kap su chiyo. Pa woka joju yome shong yeshe yi chen den pa nam la kap su chiyo. Drinsen sa wa dan gerpa jepe pal dan lama dan pa nam la kap su chiyo. Yidam kilgor gila sok nam la kap su chiyo. Sange chom dende nam la kap su chiyo. Dan petro nam la kap su chiyo. Pepege du nam la kap su chiyo. Pa woka joju yome shong yeshe yi chen den pa nam la kap su chiyo. Okay. Okay. So now on page 32, we recite this, and we do a short meditation, the solution. It says, the objects of refuge dissolve into the main figure, and he dissolves into your crown. Kabyor kornam so wo dang, de yang wu du ser ne rang la tempar gyor. So we visualize the lineage tree, all the beings on the lineage tree, all dissolving into light, all dissolving into Vajradhara, Vajradhara dissolving into light, and dissolving through the crown of your head into your heart center. Abide in that meditation. Now, as that meditation is our ground, we now go to the next part, which is the Vajrasattva part, which is the purification part. So first we turn to page 45 in this booklet, and if you have the Deity Yoga text, this other book that we had that has it's a red book. I think you guys have it. Jane, or you do have it? Oh, good. Sometimes I do things right. Okay, so go to page 85 in that book, the last section where it's the Vajrasattva section. So if you have the other booklet, Debbie, you have a copy. You have the practice that we're talking about, and Matthew, you've got yours. Okay. All right, good. All right. So now we recite the introduction, and then we'll have an explanation. We'll talk about it a little bit. Generally speaking, virtuous and non-virtuous acts depend on mind. Mind is the master, and the body and speech are the servants. Driven by the power of afflictive emotions, controlled by desire, hatred, and so forth, we create non-virtues, such as the 5 heinous karmas, the 5 close karmas, the 10 non-virtues, and breaking vows and samayas. It is non-virtuous if we do these things ourselves, if we ask others to do them for us, or if we rejoice when these deeds are done by others. Not only that, when the mind is under the control of desire, hatred, and so forth, we continue to create non-virtue, even if we hear, study, and practice the precious Dharma. These non-virtues will bring suffering and undesirable conditions. These non-virtues can be created when we conquer our enemies, protect our relatives and friends, defend our own body, and accumulate wealth. We leave these things behind when we face death, but the non-virtues will follow us like a shadow, life after life, and become a source of all suffering. Therefore, it is very wise to purify all the non-virtues we create before the results arise. If we use the 4 powers, this purification may be very effective. The 4 powers are remorse, antidote, resolve, and reliance. In the Vajrayana, Vajrasattva meditation is a special practice for the purification of non-virtue. So with confidence and without hesitation, enter into the Vajrasattva practice. Have sincere remorse for all evil deeds. Confess them and resolve not to create any more negative karma, even at the risk of your own life. Then take refuge, cultivate the mind of enlightenment, recite the mantra, and meditate on emptiness as the antidote and reliance. So going back, so generally speaking, virtuous and non-virtuous acts all depend on mind. You know, we have thoughts, we have mental thoughts, intellectual thoughts that are giving us motivation to go out and do whatever it is that we do, whatever action we take, whether it's with our voice, with our speech, that's an action, or whether it's with our hands and our legs, that's an action. So all that has a premeditation to it, all that has thought to that. So it's reminding us about that. It says, mind is the master, and the body and speech are the servants. Driven by the power of afflictive emotions, controlled by desire, hatred, and so forth, we create non-virtues such as the 5 heinous karmas. So the 5 root emotions, the 5 root poisons that we all should know are ignorance, desire, hatred, greed, and jealousy. So out of those 5 basic poisons and all their myriad combinations come the 84,000 emotions that we talk about. It's said that the Buddha, during the time of his life, during the time of his teachings and so on, as he went from one village to another throughout northern India, he encountered 84,000 emotions by the people that were coming to him and talking to him, and he was able to identify those 84,000 and help people to recognize that all these come down to the 5 basic root poisons. So we create non-virtues such as the 5 heinous karmas. So the 5 heinous karmas are killing, are lying, are stealing, are intoxication, and is sexual misconduct, are the 5 heinous crimes. These 5 heinous crimes can, no matter what we do, no matter how much virtue we develop, no matter how many good deeds, by doing these 5 heinous crimes, it's like pulling the rug from underneath of our feet. And it just upsets everything that we have done, and we have to repair all this negative karma that is created, all this negativity, all this confusion that is created. So I'm sure in your life, you've had these things where you have periods where everything seems really great. You've been a really good person. You've been really happy with yourself. But then some situation comes up that your anger arises, or your ignorance arises, or your desire arises. Something arises that causes all those good deeds to kind of be forgotten. And you got to go through a process of purification, of healing, of confession that this happened and so on, to be able to get back to where you were. So here is a concentrated practice in order to be able to do that, to become totally aware of that and be able to do this quickly and efficiently, to be able to recognize the negativity and be able to repair it and to restore your stability in your spirituality. So the 5 heinous karmas, the 5 close karmas, the 5 close karmas are a variation of that. I need to look that up. I don't have that handy in front of me. Let me see. Maybe I got that here. The 5 close karmas are sexually violating a monastic. The second one is knowingly kill a bodhisattva who is certain to attain enlightenment. The third one is killing a member of the Sangha who has entered the path of training. The fourth one is misappropriations of Sangha's property. And the last one is destroying a stupa. So those are the 5 close karmas. The 10 non-virtues we should all be familiar with, that there are 3 groups of the 10 non-virtues. There's 3 of the body, 4 of the speech, and 3 of the mind. So the killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct are the 3 non-virtues of the body. Then the 4 of the speech are lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and idle talk. And then the 3 of the mind are covetousness, harmful thought, and wrong views. So we've talked about these things many times. If you have questions about them, we can talk more about it now. But on the other side of that, the 10 non-virtues are the 10 virtues. So rather than killing, we protect the lives of others. Rather than stealing, we practice great generosity. rather than sexual misconduct, we maintain moral ethics. Then the 4 of the speech, rather than lying, we always speak the truth. Rather than harmonizing with those who are unfriendly, rather than divisive speech, we harmonize those who are unfriendly. Rather than harsh words, we speak peacefully and politely. And rather than idle talk or gossip, we speak meaningfully, truthfully. And then the 3 of the mind, rather than being covetous, rather than coveting others, we practice unattachment. And rather than harmful thought for others, that we practice loving kindness. And rather than wrong views, we engage in the perfect meaning. So these 10 virtues and 10 non-virtues are very, very important, and we should be able to recollect them very swiftly and easily. So, to have notes and so on is very important, I think, for us. And it's perfectly fine to do that. So whether you use a piece of paper or something that has that, or I use my note section in my phone. It is filled with all these little guides and so on to help me to go to a place that I have nearby that has all these things written down. So there's no reason why you can't do that. So then the sentence here back in the book, it says, and breaking vows and samayas. So the vows and the samayas are really the same thing. The samayas are those vows that we take, our refuge vows and so on that we take, and the wishes that we have, the aspirations that we have, and that to be able to honor those and to maintain those. So if we break those vows, if we break those samayas, that we recognize that and we need to repair them. So that's what this practice is about. So it is non-virtuous if we do these things ourselves, if we ask others to do them for us, or if we rejoice when the deeds are done by others. So we have to take responsibility for these things. And what we're trying to do is to maintain peace in our minds. We watch television, we read the news, we on our phones or whatever, we read the newspapers, magazines, and so on, and we hear all these terrible things going on in the world. And, I think for most of us, a revenge pops up into our mind, a blaming of who's responsible for these terrible things, and wouldn't it, and these people need to be punished for this, and you would rejoice at this, and you're glad that you don't have to do it, that somebody else will do it, but you rejoice at that and everything. And that's as powerful as actually doing the deed yourself with your own hands and so on. So what we need to do, and it's very difficult to do, is to maintain a mindful peacefulness all the time, not to be affected by these things. Maybe we do it by not involving ourselves, not watching these things, not listening to these things, not reading these things, not engaging in the conversation for these things. But even if we do, to be able to maintain the attitude of unattachment to these things. To be able to do that. It may not be realistic for us to be able to completely isolate ourselves from the ways of the world, the ways of samsara, but to be unaffected by the desires, to be unaffected by the hatreds and the jealousies and the greediness and the ignorance and so on that is being carried out by samsara, within samsara. So this is the trick that we're all trying to master. It says, not only that, when the mind is under the control of desire, hatred, and so forth, we continue to create non-virtue, even if we hear, study, and practice the precious Dharma. So if we are affected by we are practicing the Dharma, then you know it still is a problem. You know, and so the best thing is to be able to maintain this attitude of purity, of finding the purity of the Buddha, this Buddha consciousness, and so on, to be able to abide within that. Then it says, the non-virtues will bring suffering and undesirable conditions. These non-virtues can be created when we conquer our enemies, protect our relatives and friends, defend our own body, and accumulate wealth. So we have many rationalizations why we can have these impure thoughts, why we can do these non-virtuous deeds, these unwholesome deeds. There's many rationalizations, but all of them carry the responsibility of the attachments, the aversions, and so on that we would have to suffer from these. So you can think of them like stains. You know, they may not be by themselves. Any one of them may not be the thing that breaks open all the work that you've done, your dedication to the Dharma, but you can look at it that maybe there's cracks. There's cracks in the armor. You know, there's rubbing away of the protections and so on. So we need to guard ourselves against those. So it says we leave these things behind when we face death, but the non-virtues will follow us like a shadow, life after life, and become a source of all suffering. So this is the whole concept of karma, cause and result, that we do these things and it creates a karma within ourselves. It creates an action within ourselves that has a vibration to it, that the vibration can be non-harmonious with the pure vibration that we are trying to align ourselves with. In other words, we become discordant with that. We become a noise instead of that harmony that is pervading all phenomena, all nature, who we are, and so on. And there's this discordance of this negativity. So we need to be able to recognize that, and there is a way to be able to neutralize that disharmony so that it does become harmonious. And that's what this Vajrasattva practice is about. We have that power within ourselves. Vajrasattva is within ourselves. Vajra means the indestructible wisdom, indestructible. And Sat is a being. And Va is a holy being. So it's the indestructible holy being. This Vajrasattva is within ourselves. This, what we say, this deity, this Buddha, who sees all things. You can't lie to yourself. You know what's going on. Even when you mask it and you create this delusion of purity and you portray that to other people and so on like that. You know that deep down, you know that it's phony. You know that you're doing this, to protect yourself in a non-virtuous way. So Vajrasattva is the confessor, is like the confessor that knows the truth. And we need to recognize that and own up to that within ourselves, even if we don't do it to own up to it with other people. But as we become more confident and stable in being able to confess that to ourselves, there's less trepidation for us to be able to admit that to others. Oh, I'm a phony. I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, I'm confused as much as anybody else. Everything I do and everything I say has a confusion component to it, and so on. So to be able to recognize that is to purify oneself from the attachments and aversions to that falsity that we are as pure as we want to be. That doesn't mean that we can't work our way through and we become a Buddha in this very lifetime, that we can become a Bodhisattva. But in each step, we are purifying that non-virtue. So recognizing that non-virtue is very important to maintain the pathway to the purity to be able to do that. So it says, but the non-virtues will follow us like a shadow, life after life, and become a source of all suffering. So when we were born, when we were conceived, that there was something like this energy, this entity, whatever you want to call it, that combined with the egg of your mother and the sperm of your father, and then your spirit all came together, and these three came together. And this life force has remained with us throughout our entire lifetime. And that life force is running up and down the center channel through the center of our body that is parallel to our spine. It's invisible. But this life force is running up and down in there. And that life force, that spiritual energy that we brought to that, had certain karmic imprints on that. They came from past lifetimes. So this lifetime, we begin to recognize that, we begin to realize that, and we begin to purify those impurities. Because what we're preparing ourselves for is when we drop this physical body, when we no longer have the properties of the physical body, the eggs and the sperm and so on like that, all we become is that pure spirit again. And that pure spirit then will incarnate into another body. And then, so whatever seeds that we have been able to cultivate will be carried through into that next life and so on. So we have this life, this precious human life, in order to be able to purify those fruitions of that karma that has come up, and we've not suppressed it. We've recognized it, and we've worked with that to be able to overcome those negativities, so that they no longer become an impediment to our purification, to our purity. So, of course, there's much more about that conversation, and we'll talk about that in the months to come. So now the next paragraph of this introduction, it says, therefore, it is very wise to purify all the non-virtues we create before the results arise. So we mentally have to allow these things to come up in our mind, recognize these things, and to work on them. You know, when we sit down and do meditation, and we go through all these stages of meditation, our meditation, this process gets interrupted. It gets interrupted by the thoughts of these non-virtues that come up in our mind. You know, things that we remember that we did 25 years ago, or 35 or 45 years ago, things that we have conveniently suppressed, come up, and now we have to deal with them. You know, so we do, with joy, with happiness, that, oh, now I remember what I did. I'm capable of being a liar. I'm capable of being a thief. I'm capable of being a murderer. I've done these things before, and I can do them again unless I purify them. I find out what the roots of what it is that cause these things, and ultimately I wind up cutting these off. I cut these off. I cut these off through wisdom, through compassion, through joy, through equanimity, through bodhicitta, is like the knife that cuts through all of these things. So we're developing the skill in being able to do that. So we allow these things to come up. When they come up, we don't look at ourselves as being poor people or bad people. We look at ourselves as being, well, this is what I was, but I need to purify this. We all are coming from this defiled afflictions, these afflictive emotions, these defiled minds, these defiled behaviors that we've gone through. So we purify all the non-virtues we create before the results arise. So if we use the 4 powers, so now here is the core of what the Vajrasattva practice is. This is the core of it. So you should write this down, underline it, put it in your phone, whatever. This is the essence of what the Vajrasattva practice is. These 4 powers, this purification can be very effective. The 4 powers are remorse, that we take remorse for what it is that we have done, for what it is that we have thought. A thought is an unrealized action, so we need to purify those thoughts. So we have to have remorse for that. It's very subtle. It takes a lot of work, but yet that's our job. That's what we need to do. So we have remorse for those deeds that we did and for the thoughts that we have. I'm sorry I did that. I do not want to do that. The antidote, how do we overcome that? The antidote sometimes is called the remedy. If the remorse is recognizing an illness, and I'm sorry I have this illness, the remedy or the antidote is the medicine that we apply to that negativity, to that illness. So the antidote, what do we do to be able to do that? The antidote. So the antidote in the first part is confession, is being able to admit that this thought, that this action has come into your mind, into your life. And by admitting that, by recognizing that, and by taking responsibility for that, is the first huge step in being able to overcome that. Then the next is the resolve to purify this and not to do this again. The resolve not to do this again. I promise myself, I take a vow not to do this again. And I will do everything I can to maintain this purity. I resolve this purity, that I will be a new version of myself that is more pure, that is more stable in the virtues. So I resolve to do that. And then the last one is the reliance, that we rely on the practices. We rely on the Dharma, both the wisdom of the Dharma, but also the practice of the Dharma, to help us to stabilize, to cultivate this virtue, this virtuous life. That this is what we are here to do, is to recognize virtue and to stabilize virtue. So these sometimes are called the 4 R's. When I learned this, it was the 4 R's. It was the remorse, the remedy, the resolve, and the reliance. So if that helps you to remember these things, then great. If you've got another way of doing it, then that's fine too. But it means the same thing. The remedy and the antidote are the same thing. So these 4 things, the reliance on the practice, is very, 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 very important, of course. So it says in the Vajrayana, the Vajra path, the Vajra vehicle, the indestructible path, the path of wisdom, this is the Tibetan Buddhism. This is the path of Tibetan Buddhism. This is what we're learning. Not only to be devoted, not only to have discipline, but to cultivate the wisdom of the Buddha, of being free, of being liberated, of virtue. It says Vajrasattva meditation is a special practice for the purification of non-virtue. So we're going to see how that is done. So with this confidence and without hesitation, enter into the Vajrasattva practice. Have sincere remorse for evil deeds. Confess them. Resolve not to create more negative karma, even at the risk of your own life. So this is a huge part, this statement here, not at the risk of your own life. You know, do you prize your life more important than the purity? In other words, is there a situation where you will lie, where you will protect yourself, even and kill somebody to protect your own life or to protect the life of somebody else? This is a very fundamental question. This is a very powerful question for ourselves. What will we do to protect our own life, and why? Do we think that our life is more important than the virtue that is being symbolized here, that is being talked about here? Is virtue greater than our lives, or is our life greater than virtue? So the way of virtue is the abiding reason why we are here in the first place. And we've had many, 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 many lifetimes in order to be able to stabilize that virtue. But because we have not been able to accomplish that with all these different lives, no matter how many lives we've had, we maybe have purified, we've increased our virtue, but we still have not completely reached the level of being Buddha, where it's unable to do anything but virtue. There is nothing else. There is nothing other than virtue. So the reason why we are here, even in this lifetime, is to be able to recognize this and to be able to continue the process of our purification of our non-virtue, to be able to establish the stability of that virtue. And that virtue is indestructible. It cannot die. It is what we say is, that is the absolute nature. You know, if we talk about, you know, that all this is impermanent, that the absolute nature, in the face of that, you know, there's a permanence to that we say is a conceptual idea, this permanence, but it is what pervades all things. You know, and so and it's beyond concept. We can experience it through our meditation. This is why we develop meditation, because our meditation is rising above our human intellectual capacity, because this is beyond that. And how can I say that? How can I say that to you? I can say that to you because I've experienced it. And that's what the great masters are trying to transmit to all of us. This is the teaching of the Buddha. He says, I can't give you enlightenment, but I can show you, I can tell you the way that I got there. You have to get there yourself. You can use my path if you want to. It's a repeatable path. I can teach it to you, but you can use your own path. You can devise your own. For myself, I'm just not smart enough to be able to figure that out. And I was very grateful to discover the pathway of the Dharma, the teaching of the Buddha, who helped me to unlock those confusions that I had, those impurities that I had, to be able to recognize this. But yet I had to do it myself. You know, so we all have that to do. You can follow Christianity, you can follow Judaism, you can follow Hinduism, you can follow Taoism, you can follow any of these different religious traditions that in essence is trying to teach us the same passage to that virtue. The Buddhism for me is very, very, very articulate and has a vast body of 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 scripture and of beings, of stories of those who have experienced this, and I found great understanding in that, recognition in that, and saying, "Oh yes, I understand completely what's being said." But that doesn't mean I didn't understand it in Christian terms. I didn't understand. I did understand it in Christian terms. I understood it in Hebrew terms. I understood it in Taoist terms, in Hindu terms, and so on like that. But the Buddhism offers a greater vocabulary, a greater field of experience. So this had to do with being able to engage in these practices and these teachings to be able to develop this, to be able to recognize it yourself. That's the point here. So it says, back to the text, it says, have sincere remorse for evil deeds, confess them, and resolve not to create more negative karma, even at the risk of your own life. That's what we were talking about. That our life is a stage along the way. It's a play, you know. We buy tickets to go to a play or something like that, and we watch this theatrical presentation, and maybe it lasts for 2 hours or so, you know, and you see this drama that takes place. Well, our life is like that. In this life, maybe it lasts us 50 years or 60 years or 70, 80, 90, 100 years or whatever, but it is a play in the action. That's why we're studying in the sutras. We're playing the play in full. You know, the life of what it is to be a virtuous being, the life of what it is to be Buddha. So we're aligning ourselves with that. The play of Lance is filled with all kinds of confusion. It's not one to follow as Lance, but to follow it as one who is on the path and look at it from those terms, it begins to make more sense. So whether it's Matthew or it's Debbie or it's Jane, the same thing. You know, where is the best of you? So to be able to look at this life as a stepping stone, as a just a period of time, an opportunity to be able to rid ourselves of confusion and be able to see the true nature of our lives. So then we take refuge, cultivate the mind of enlightenment, recite the mantra, and meditate on emptiness as the antidote and reliance. So this meditate on emptiness as the antidote and reliance. Now this is very important. And if you don't understand emptiness yet, that's one of the core things and maybe one of the most vague things or most difficult things for us to understand, this emptiness as the antidote and reliance. As a human being, we are empty of our own true nature. We are constantly trying to solidify that emptiness. We want that emptiness to be an identity rather than saying, I don't know who I am. I don't know what this is. But we realize that this phenomenal nature is all empty of any logic, of anything that we can create in order to stabilize what we think is true, is actually all this impermanence and everything. It's all changing. So to abide in that emptiness means to be able to liberate ourselves from trying to stabilize this all the time, the impermanence, and to abide in the freedom that the emptiness has come from and that the emptiness is. So it's like there's this field of freedom that that manifests itself. It coalesces this energy so that we can see it and recognize it, but only to let it go, to see, oh, well, that's just a temporary mind. And I conceptualize all these ideas of coming together, but it still misses the very point of the freedom, the essence from which it comes. So it's this emptiness as the antidote and the reliance. That we're able to bring all these things, all these disparate things onto this pathway. And this is how we forgive ourselves. This is how we do these things by saying, okay, I have done these things in the past, but now I recognize these things. I won't do these things again. And then it's neutralized, and I can abide in that neutralization. That the positive and the negative, the dualistic nature, has become neutralized. If it remains dualistic, then there's still tension. There's still the confusion. So if we can abide in that, in the emptiness that is taught to us in the Mahayana, this is introduced to us in the Mahayana, it is perfected in the Vajrayana, in the wisdom tradition. So, I don't expect that this is going to make a whole lot of sense and stay with you in this one conversation, but it is the repetition of doing these practices and the meditation in order to gain more and more and more insight into not what it is that is non-conceptual, but to recognize what it is that blocks that non-conceptuality. What it is that is always interrupting us. Our true nature is freedom, is that peaceful mind. But we're constantly barraged with all these thoughts that are just pulling us away. It's like an anchor. It's like a chain, a ball and chain that's pulling us down, all these thoughts, to liberate ourselves from those. So all this is a means to be able to recognize those things. And one by one, we begin to cut them off. We're cutting off the roots of the connection of those things, and they just fall away. And we become lighter. We become purer. We become freer. And it's easier to maintain that peacefulness. And when something comes to interrupt us, we have the skill to be able to recognize what it is and to neutralize it very, very quickly. And to restore our peacefulness. Any comments or questions you got about this?
I have a. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lynch.
No, go ahead.
Um, so, uh, in terms of Vajrasattva and visualizing the form, would you say it makes sense in terms of to look at it? It makes sense from the perspective of the tradition in your experience as kind of calling forth something that's a a deep quality of my my consciousness, beyond my ego. I'm creating like an archetype or a form for that to be able to relate to it, like almost like I'm calling out to that pure, non-dual, maybe kind of part of my consciousness, and I'm relating to it like that. Is that
And that's what's referred to as a meditational deity.
right? Okay, so conceptualizing it in that way, because that's what kind of comes up for me. I know we've
Right,
talked about this a lot, but it's always difficult for me with the forms a little bit. I have to keep like kind of
right.
orienting myself towards it, but that
It's a
sounds
meditational deity.
right. Yeah.
It is symbolic.
hmm Yeah.
It doesn't, its form is a nebulous form. We're giving it an anthropologic form that's the right word, to look like a human being. But that's just to help us. That's just a tool that we're using to help us to learn that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. And what is the role in the Vajrasattva purification practice for um how would I say it? I guess like almost like asking for help or from the Vajrasattva energy that we were just referring to. And I'm thinking about it almost it's almost in the sense of like somehow some of the like theistic traditions will do that. Obviously it's a very different framework when there's the creator God and everything like that. Or even in like like the 12 step traditions for people with addiction where it's like offering, it's like I can't do this on my own. I can't control this addiction on my own. Like I have to give up that sense of control, and then there's like a higher power involved in it. So something that has that flavor of that idea, where I think there is something kind of powerful in that, as long as it's not solidified or reified in some way that's, that it's still in line with the wisdom of emptiness. But it, because in the translation of the Vajrasattva mantra in English, it very much has that feature. Grow with me, be loving toward me. It's kind of like calling out to that thing, like for some kind of assistance too. Because I could see, and I've had some experience with like doing this a while ago, the Vajrasattva like purification type of practice. And at least for me, maybe this is particular to me and how my mind and ego works, but it can become very this kind of like tension, ego driven uh, type of thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but I know that was a lot of rambling there. But any thoughts or ideas about that?
Well, we've talked about this many times, and maybe now it's coming to a point where is all this taking place? Is it taking place out here, up in the sky, out in the cosmos? Is it taking place out there? Is that where all these meditational deities, is that where all this spirituality is? It's out there? What do you think?
No, no, of course not. Yeah, no,
Where is it? Where is it?
it's all within the realm of my own mind or consciousness.
Exactly.
The
And
whole
that's where
essence of the
Vajrasattva
Buddha's
is.
teachings.
And
No, no,
that's
I,
where
I
all
get
these
that part. Yeah.
meditational deities are. It's all within ourselves.
Hmm.
So we're using these practices as a means to be able to recognize our diamond nature,
Hmm.
this indestructible nature that is in our heart center. This is the life force of the of your spirit that has been combined with your mother's egg and your father's sperm, and this is your life force that's running around in here, and it's made up of bodhicitta, but it has all these facets, and all these facets are the activities of that bodhicitta. And each one of these facets has a name, and they're all the deities. They're all the meditational deities. That's what we're coming to learn, and to learn that it's all within ourselves. So we're calling upon ourselves to do these things.
For sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess when I'm making the distinction, it's more of that ego self versus, maybe the bigger capital S self if it
Well,
was
the
more of a
ego is trying to say, oh, it's Matthew that's doing this.
right,
Oh,
exactly.
it's Lance that's doing this.
Hmm.
And what we're trying to do is to get rid of the I, me, mine. Get rid of the Lance, get rid of the Matthew. It works at a certain level, at a certain vibrational level. The ego is a means to survive, physically and intellectually, psychologically in a world. It's there for a reason. But at this level, the ego just gets in the way. And we got to be able to say, okay, here's your job here, but up here, I don't need you anymore. And to be able to let that go, to be able to stabilize that. And then to recognize yourself as Vajrasattva, recognize yourself as Tara, recognize yourself as Sangye Menla, Medicine Buddha, all the different deities, all the different aspects. that you begin to recognize yourself that way, not out of ego, but just out of your activities, out of your peacefulness, out of your heart thoughts. And your heart thoughts and your brain thoughts become even with each other, that you become that living Buddha in all of its different applications.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm definitely with you 100%. And I won't beat the point to death, but and I guess uh
Ask yourself the question, what am I trying to find the answer to? Am I trying to rationalize the stabilization? Am I trying to rationalize the, the ego and the I, me, mine in all of this?
I guess what I'm mulling over with you all together, just kind of thinking, processing through it out loud, and I'm thinking more about my past experience. Now I'm in a very different place than I was 8 years ago, 10 years ago when I was messing around with this practice some before. Not messing around with it, but practicing it a little bit before. Is to not is to practice it in a way that's harmonizing me with that what we're referring to as Vajrasattva here, rather than it becoming neurotic for me. That's really what I'm just feeling out.
Say that sentence again.
Becoming neurotic in the sense of uh, constantly looking over my shoulder with my monitoring my thoughts and behaviors, and then the guilt about it and things like that. Now that's
Right,
not the purpose of the practice, but I'm just feeling out how I can make this work for myself in the best way. But
right.
I don't know.
So let me point you in a direction that's very important. Go back to page 15 in our book, in the Ngöndro book. Go back to page 15. And this is the fourth of the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, right? So it says in the three lower realms and then even in the three higher ones, there's not an instant of absolute happiness. So it's talking about the six realms of being a human being. But then the next line, it says, I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So to avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence means, why am I here? How did I get here? And that's less important than the next part where it says, and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. That's what we need to concentrate on. How do I practice the peace? Not why it is that I'm here. If we keep looking in the past, we're stuck. But if we are able to cut ourselves off, we have to use the visualization of cutting ourselves off. And that's what the ah in the 100-syllable mantra, the last word, the last syllable of the 100-syllable mantra is ah, is cutting off. I'm just going to cut it off. I got to stop. All right, good questions, and thank you very much. So why don't we take a break? It's 11:15. Let's come back at 11 o'clock. We'll have a shorter break, and then we'll come back. Anybody have any other questions? Write them down right now or as you think of them, and we'll answer them when we come back. But give everybody a chance to stretch and do what you need to do. See you in 15 minutes or so. All right, so thank you all very much for coming back. And I would just like to say something about this particular Vajrasattva text that we're about to use. There's various different texts for all these different deity practices. In the Ngöndro, which we're focused on these Sundays, there's a very short one that was given by Garchen Rinpoche, which is very good. And then there's a middle one that we use with the other Drikung Kagyu in the TMC and different places, this medium sized one. This is the one that is in this book that we're using today. And then there is a longer one, a more elaborate one that is used in the 3-year retreat that is in the Fivefold Path of Mahamudra book. And that's a little bit more extensive. So one day it might be very good to get to that, but this is the medium level one. So I just want to point out that, these different levels of intensity or detail of these different practices and so on. So does anybody have any questions or comments about what we were talking about before with the introduction? Okay. All right. So then we are on page 45 of the Ngöndro book, of the book that is labeled the Uncommon Preliminary Practices. So it's these two practices, the refuge practice we've been doing, and now the Vajrasattva. So today we're going through the explanation, so we'll see how far we get with this. But, all right, so on page 45, it begins, it says, on the crown of one's head, so we're visualizing on the crown of our head, is a white 5-pointed Vajra, arises from the syllable hung that rests on a moon mandala upon a lotus. So that's got a lot of stuff in it. This is a Vajra, if you can see this. This is in Tibetan language, it's called a dorje. And it represents, it's symbolic of indestructible wisdom, is what it represents. Just to give a little bit of background, in Hinduism, this is representative of a thunderbolt or a diamond. And so it's showing its power, its lightning power as a thunderbolt, or as a diamond, which is indestructible. Nothing can hurt a diamond except another diamond can cut a diamond. So in Buddhism, this represents the indestructible wisdom of the Buddha Dharma, of the absolute nature. The indestructible wisdom of the absolute nature. We talk about the relative nature, and that's all this Dharma, that's all that we're learning about and everything. But the absolute nature, that is from which all this derives, that is unspeakable, inexpressible, and so on like that. So this Vajra represents that. So it's got a center here, and it's two things. It's showing two identical sides. So this is standing on our head at our crown like this. You can see that. It says, on the crown of one's head, a white 5-pointed Vajra arises from the syllable hung. So this arises from the syllable hung. So now, to visualize that, if we go to our daily practices and prayers book, if we go to the last page of that, is the syllable hung. Everybody got that book, the red book? Jane, you got that? So first appears the syllable hung, then this Vajra appears. So the hung is the seed syllable of what this object is. So the seed syllable is there. Then that transforms into this indestructible wisdom Vajra that rests upon a moon mandala upon a lotus. So the moon mandala would be a let me see if I got an example of that. Jane, did you have the Medicine Buddha book? Did I send you the Medicine Buddha book? No, maybe not. Okay. Sorry.
No.
All right.
Now, the only other one is the Wheel of Meditative Concentration.
Okay. All right. So a mandala is a display, is a pictorial display of this phenomenal nature. So it looks something like this. This is a mandala. So a moon mandala is what's resting on the crown of the head, and the Hong's coming out of that, then the Vajra's coming out of that. That rests on a moon mandala upon a lotus. So the lotus is the lotus flower, so it's like the pedestal. So if you look on the opposing page to page 45 in this book that we're using, you see these three deities that are at the bottom here: Vajrapani, Vajradhara in the center, and Vajrasattva. So, so you see that they're all standing on a lotus pedestal, and then there's a moon mandala on top of that. There's a moon disc seat, a moon mandala on top of that. In this drawing, this line drawing, you can't see it clearly, but you see that there's this plain disc that they're on. So the lotus flower, the lotus pedestal represents our transcendence of our samsaric nature, of the fact that we come from samsara, the ocean of suffering. So the ocean of suffering has, on the bottom, is all this silt and all this disgusting debris that falls, to the bottom of the pond, at this ocean of suffering. And in that ocean, in that bottom, are all these seeds, that when the conditions are right, germinate. They open up, and the shoot of the lotus seed sends a sprout that goes all the way through the water, goes all the way through the ocean of suffering, and then pierces the surface of the ocean of suffering. And it's there that the lotus flower opens and blossoms. So it's a metaphor that we all come from this ocean of suffering. We all come from these karmic seeds that are in the bottom of this samsara. And then, but when the conditions are right, that seed opens up, and the stalk of the sprout comes up, goes right straight through all that ocean of suffering. But then when it pierces out of the surface of the water in the open atmosphere, that's when it blossoms. And it's unstained by all the ocean of suffering, all those defilements that are in the ocean. So it's a metaphor for what it is to be a human being. We're born into this life. We have this physical body. It's a result of past karma and so on. So there are these implied, karmic seeds within ourselves. But now, as we sit on the lotus cushion, as we sit on this cushion, we are our purity is able to manifest. And we're not born in the ocean of suffering. We're born above that, beyond that. So the moon represents the compassion of the wisdom. The other side of the moon disk is the sun disk, and the sun disk represents the wisdom, and the other side of that is the moon disk, which represents compassion. So they always go together. It's like two sides of the same hand. One side is the wisdom, the other side is the compassion. The compassion is the display of the wisdom, is the skillful means of the wisdom. If you have wisdom and all you do is just think about your wisdom, then that's nice. But when you start to talk about it, when you start to teach it, when you start to perform it, that is the compassion of that wisdom. You're actualizing that wisdom. If you are speaking without the benefit of wisdom, then things aren't necessarily pure. If you have wisdom without the ability to be able to actualize it, then that's not necessarily pure. But when you are able to have the wisdom and the skillful means, the method, to be able to express it, then that leads to enlightenment. So that's what the moon disk and the sun disk represent, is that manifestation of wisdom and compassion. So this indestructibility is coming out of that. Okay? We are coming out of that. This indestructibility, this wisdom, this skillful means is us coming out of that. So then the next sentence says, the Vajra is marked in the center with the syllable Hung. So this Vajra comes out of the Hung, but then in the center of the Vajra is another Hung now. So we're visualizing that. And then light radiates from this Hung, making offerings to the Aryas and accomplishing the benefit of sentient beings through emanation and collection. So light is coming from this, and this light is going in the 10 directions. The 10 directions, if you don't know this, the 10 directions are the 4 cardinal directions, which is east, south, west, and north. Then the 4 intermediate directions, which is southeast, southwest, northwest, and northeast. Those are the intermediate directions. So these are points on the compass, right? So those are 8 directions, the 8 points on the compass. But then there is up and there is down. So those are the 10 directions. When we talk about the 10 directions, that's what it's saying. Another way of looking at this is 3-dimensionally and saying that what this is creating, what this image is creating, is like a sphere. That it's going in all directions. It's going in front of us, it's going above us, it's going to the left and right of us, but it's also going behind us. So it's a sphere. These 10 directions are illustrating a sphere. So it's going in that. Light radiates from it, making offerings to the Aryas and accomplishing the benefit of sentient beings. So this light is going to the Aryas. So the Aryas means the noble ones. And the noble ones are the meditational deities. The meditational deities. And all the different lamas and teachers and gurus that are on the lineage tree. So this light from this Hung at the center is going to all these beings, to the intellectual meditational deities that are in our brain, so to speak, that the visualizations are in our brain, but to all these other wise deities that, or rather wise teachers that have come before us and that are here now and so on like that, the Aryas, the noble ones. And it's accomplishing, and this light is accomplishing the benefit of sentient beings through emanation and collection. So this light goes to all these beings. But then this light comes back from those beings, from the heart of those beings, comes back into the Hung, comes back from them, comes back. So what's coming back are their blessings, their teachings, their virtue is coming back in the form of light that is coming back into this Hung. So this Hung, this Vajra, this whole thing is being charged up with all this energy, all this virtuous energy. And it's accomplishing the core of the purpose of all this is for the benefit of the enlightenment of all sentient beings through emanation and collection. The emanation is going out and the collection is coming back. And it's charging up this hung, it's charging up this indestructible wisdom in order that it may go out to benefit all beings, to show them the way to enlightenment. Is that clear? I mean, can you visualize that to some degree? Okay. So then the next stanza here, it says, the Vajra becomes the complete form of Vajrasattva, whose body is white, the color of light rays striking the peak of a snow mountain. Okay, so this Vajra now, that's still on the top of our head, that's all charged up now, becomes the complete form of Vajrasattva, whose body is white. So now, if you look on the opposite page here, and you see the three deities, and you see on the right is Buddha Vajrasattva. So this is a line drawing. So his body is white, and he's sitting, he's wearing all the robes, all the clothing and so on, of adornments of a Buddha Bodhisattva, a meditational deity. So he's got a tiara, and the tiara has 5 jewels in it that represent the 5 Buddha families. And he's sitting on the lotus cushion. He's sitting on the lotus pedestal on the moon mandala. He's sitting on that. And in his right hand, he's got the Vajra, and it's at his heart. In his left hand, he's got a bell. The bell and the Vajra always go together. The bell represents wisdom. The wisdom that is the feminine principle. That is the feminine principle of wisdom. The Vajra is the skillful means, is the method, symbolization of the masculine. So the feminine, has the wisdom. The masculine actualizes the wisdom. The two always go together. So in Vajradhara, seated like this, with a wrist crossed like this. In Vajrasattva, the Vajra is at the heart, and the bell, if you can look at it on that picture, you can see that the bell is turned up, and that on his left hand, and it's resting at his hip. So he is the embodiment of this wisdom at the hip, at the strength of his body. You can look at it as this is the core, of our body is at our belly, is that furnace, that our solar plexus is our second brain, and the energy center. And here is the wisdom, the skillful means that's at the heart. So Vajrasattva is holding that. So in addition, Vajrasattva, his 2 legs, you can see that his left leg is drawn into his body. It's part of, the cross-leg position that we sit, in the Vajra position, the lotus position that is called when both legs are crossed. So if you look at Vajradhara, you can see Vajradhara's both legs are crossed. So the left leg of Vajrasattva it's drawn in, as stability of the Dharma. But his right leg, you see, is extended. And it's extended in a way that he is ready to launch. He's ready to stand up. He's ready to activate for the benefit of other beings. He's not, it's a very active position in relation to Vajradhara, which is, completely stable. So Vajrasattva, his right leg is extended. So let me go back to the text. So it says, the Vajra becomes the complete form of Vajrasattva, whose body is white. White is the color of purity. Okay, so you need to know that white is the color of purity. And the color of light rays striking the peak of a snow mountain. So that purity is so intense, like the sun hitting the peak of a snow mountain. So you got to imagine this is in Tibet, almost 20,000 feet high. The atmosphere is very thin, and the light hitting Mount Everest or Mount Kailash or any of those great mountainous peaks in Tibet is blinding. And they got to wear, different things that they have to protect their eyes and so on. But it's so pure, it's so powerful, and that's the light, that's the color of Vajrasattva. The light rays striking the peak of a snow mountain. Then he has one face and two hands. He is holding a 5-pronged Vajra to his heart with his right hand and holding a Ganta to his hip with his left hand. So let me make this point. The left is receiving. We are receiving with our left. It comes in, and our left arm comes in and is closest to our heart. So that wisdom, he's holding the bell, that wisdom in his left is symbolic of that wisdom coming in and coming to the heart. Then the right is that energy, that wisdom that is coming out in the form of compassion or skillful means or method, is coming out for the benefit of all beings. So the left is receiving, the right is going out. So from the heart, that indestructible wisdom is going out to all beings, is what's being symbolized here. So he has one face, two hands. He's holding a 5-pronged Vajra to his heart with his right hand and holding a Ganta to his hip with his left. Then his feet are in the half lotus posture. He is wearing silk and precious ornaments. So you can see his clothing is all very, very beautiful silks and embroidered, the best quality of all things and so on. He's in this human form, but he is a meditational deity, representing that this is within ourselves. This is what it is to be a complete human being, to be these meditational deities, not just Vajrasattva, but all the different deities and so on. So then below that is the instructions in the Tibetan language. So it's important, but it's not as important as knowing the meaning of this in your own language, knowing this in the English language. This is instructional right here. So whether we recite this in Tibetan is secondary compared to knowing the meaning, knowing the English and what it means and so on. So we're going to not recite it right now. So then we go to page 47, and it says, light emanates from Vajrasattva's 3 places marked with the 3 syllables Om Ah Hum, inviting the Janasattvas and the empowerment deities of the 5 families. Okay, so now the 3 places. The 3 places of the deity are the crown of the head, the throat, and the heart center. So the Om is the crown, is the white Om, represents the body. The Ah is a red Ah at the throat and represents the speech. And the Hum is the blue Hum at the heart, represents the mind. So it's the body, speech, and mind of the deity, of Vajrasattva in this case. The three places marked with the three syllables Om Ah Hung, body, speech, and mind, white, red, and blue. And this light is emanating from these three places, inviting the jnana-sattvas. So the jnana-sattvas, jnana means wisdom, and sat means a being, and a sattva is a holy being. So these jnana-sattvas are all the different deities, all the different meditational deities that are all in our heart center, in this diamond, but also in all the heart centers of all the other beings all around us and so on, and in all the atoms, all the structures, everything is all permeated with jnana-sattvas, with wisdom deities. This is how we begin to recognize this. We begin to recognize that all things, even this phenomenal nature, is the display of this primordial wisdom. So we begin to say in some of the prayers, we visualize that there are Buddhas in the atoms, made up of all the particles of the atoms are made up of many Buddhas, and all the space around the Buddhas, around those atomic particles, are the bodhisattvas. So all space is filled with Buddhas and bodhisattvas. So this is a visualization. This is how we begin to recognize that all this is a Buddha field. So it's inviting all these wisdom beings to come to that we shall recognize them. And then the next part of the sentence says, and the empowerment deities of the five families. So the five families are the five families of the Buddha. So there's in the four cardinal directions of the compass, in the east is Ascobia. So we don't have to go into the detail of this unless you like. Ascobia is blue and is in the east and represents the wisdom of mindfulness, or the wisdom of equanimity, we say. Oh no, mirror-like wisdom, excuse me. Mirror-like wisdom is seeing that all appearances are just manifestations of this phenomenal nature. And we are the ones who give them meaning and so on. And the meaning can be twisted and turned in all different directions. But there is this purity to that. And we need to be able to recognize the purity of that. So through the deity, that's what we are doing. So this is the all-pervading, the mirror-like wisdom, seeing that all appearances are pure. So that's Ascobia. Then the next one would be in the south and would be yellow, and that would be Ratnasambhava. Then in the west would be red, and that would be Amitabha. And then in the north would be green, and that would be Amagog City. Those are four. And then the fifth one is in the center, and that's white, and that would be Varanchana. So we will have a teaching on the five Buddha families when we have some more time. Maybe next meeting, we can spend more time talking about the five Buddha families, because it is part and parcel of what this is. So this is the opportunity to bring this into a context, into an embodiment of Vajrasattva. So it's important to do this. So we'll do this next time. So then, Za, Hong, Bam, Ho. So then we say Za, Hong, Bam, Ho. So what this is, it says in the little box there, we are hooking ourselves to the deities. So the deities are the Janisattvas and the 5 Buddha families, which I'm going to detail next time. So we're hooking ourselves to them as if they're, flying by. I'm just using this as an illustration, but as they're flying by, I'm going to hook them. I'm going to hook myself to them. Then hung is with a rope, I'm going to bind myself up with them. I'm going to tie myself up with them. So I'm going hung. And then bam, I'm going to chain myself to them. I'm going to lock myself up with them, that they are that they can't get away from me. I can't get away from them. I'm locking myself up with them like a chain. And then the last one is ho, I'm rejoicing. I'm ringing a bell. It makes inseparable that I'm rejoicing, I'm happy, gratitude is joy is filled my very being. So za, hong, bam, ho. So do this, please. So with your right hand, your index finger, your left hand is like this, okay? And so now you're taking your right index finger and you're hooking your left little finger. So this is hooking, right? Za. Then ba hong is now you're reversing that. Your left index finger and your right little finger, and you're tying yourself up with a rope. Za hong. So that's the rope. Then you take your left hand like this so that the knuckles are out, right? And then you're taking your right hand and you're bringing your fingers together, but at an angle like that. That's it. So it's kind of like a chain link. It's kind of like a chain link. And then you're moving your right hand down. That's it. So like a chain link. And you're locking yourself up with the deities. So that's the bam. And then the last one is ho. You're taking your left hand out like this, and you're taking your right hand and you're going knuckles to knuckles. So your 2 index fingers lock up and your 2 little fingers lock up like this. So that is ho, and that is like the rejoicing, the happiness. Ho, ho, ho. So the bell that makes inseparable, that you're inseparable with the deity. So za, hong, bam, ho. Okay? All this is developing mindfulness. All this is meant to develop mindfulness, to develop one-pointed mindfulness on each one of us becoming inseparable from the deity, the meditational deity that is within ourselves. And the meditational deity is symbolic of the activity of that bodhicitta, of that virtue. So you see there's a process here. Everything here has an interconnected meaning. So then the next line says, they become inseparable from the Samaya Sattva. So the Samaya Sattva, so Samaya means the vow. And Sat is a being, and Va is a holy being. So it's the vow taker, the holy being who takes the vow, the Samaya Sattva. That's us. We are the Samaya Sattva. As we approach the meditational deity, we're taking the vow to become as the meditational deity. So we are the Samaya Sattva. And then it says, having prayed to the empowerment deities by reciting. So we're praying to those empowerment deities, those 5 Buddha family deities that I've mentioned before, we'll talk about next week more in detail, but we're praying to them, these empowerment deities, that they may give us the blessings, the wisdom, the skillful means to be able to do these practices. So then here is this mantra, Om Sara Tathagata Abhishikata Tumam. So it's saying the enlightened body, speech, and mind of all the Tathagatas, give me the empowerment, give me the blessing in order that I may become virtuous, that I may become pure. Then, water from the vase fills the body, bestowing empowerment. So we visualize that each one of these deities has a vase. And I just remembered, if you look on the, you've got the picture of the lineage tree, right? On the other side of that picture is the image of this practice. So if you have that handy, I don't have mine handy right at the second, but do you all have that? Yes, you've all got that. So at the top, well, we'll go over this next week. I temporarily forgotten about that. We'll explain that, because that picture, that image, is the display of what's being characterized here. So we'll go more into that. But you see above Vajrasattva in the center, there's a vase, and there's a line, there's a ray of light that comes from those 5 Buddha families that is coming down into that vase. So all their blessing is like a nectar that is filling that vase. And then it says, here in the text, it says, water from the vase fills the body, bestowing empowerment. So that water is coming and spilling onto our heads. And we symbolize that by taking water in our left hand, we drink it, and we put the rest of it on the crown of our head. The excess becomes the crown ornament of the 5 families. That's what I'm saying. And then the empowerment deities dissolve into Vajrasattva. So all that all comes, and those 5 empowerment deities, the 5 Buddha families, all dissolve into the nectar that comes into Vajrasattva. So then page 48 is the instructions that we just read in English in Tibet. So right now we don't need to concern ourselves with that. But now we're making the offerings. Now we're making offerings to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and particularly to Vajrasattva. So Vajrasattva is within us. So what are we offering to these Buddhas? So we are offering argam. So well, let me say it this way. So thus it says, thus we offer. So it says, Om Vajrasattva Sapariwara Argam, with an underline underneath of it, Pratitsa Soha. And then below that are the words Padyam, Pushpam, Dupam, Alokam, Gande, Navitea, and Shapta. So these are the 8 offerings. So the offering mantra is Om, which means the enlightened body, speech, and mind. And Vajra means indestructible. Sattva is Vajrasattva. So it's saying Vajrasattva. So Om, the body, speech, and mind of the indestructible holy being, Vajrasattva. Sapariwara means and your entire retinue. And your entire retinue. So with each of these deities, those that have all helped us to come together, to coalesce, to become Vajrasattva, is the whole retinue that comes together. which would be the Bodhisattvas, which would be the Dharma protectors, which would be the Dakinis and Dakas, and the other Buddhas, and so on like that. So this is the whole retinue. So we're visualizing this whole entourage, if you will, that are all part of Vajrasattva, and would be represented by, on the other side of that picture, would be the lineage tree. All those on the lineage tree, all coming together, the entire retinue. So the enlightened body, speech, and mind of Vajrasattva and your entire retinue, I make the offering of argam, which is drinking water. So the argam, we have a mudra that we use like this. We'll go back over this. So we're offering drinking water. And then pratitsa, we go like this, and we click our fingers, and this is the offering. Here it is. I'm offering it. I'm giving it to you. And then the next is soha. May it be accomplished. May it be so. So, Om Vajrasattva Saparivara Argam Pratitsa Soha. So then we repeat that, Om Vajrasattva Saparivara, and so the next one, instead of argam, we're going to say padyam. And padyam is washing water. So we're scooping washing water up, and I'll explain what this means in a moment. We're scooping washing water up in order to purify ourselves. Then pushpam. Pushpam is flowers. So here's the mudra for pushpam. We're offering flowers. Then the next one is dupam. We're offering incense. And then the next one after that is alokam. We're offering light. So this would be a butter lamp. This would be the flame or a candle. And then the next one after that is gande. And gande would be perfume. So this is like the aroma of the bottle of perfume or scented water. So we're offering that. And then the next one is nuiteya, would be food, like a plate of food. We're offering food. And then the last one would be shabda, would be music. So we're like playing a drum, beating a drum. So these offerings come from the Hindu tradition that was in India, that Buddhism came out of, that the Buddha came out of, and so on. So the idea of these offerings is like you invite a guest to your home, and you live in India 2,600 years ago. There's no asphalt, nothing is paved, it's hot, it's dusty, and so on, but you invite guests to come to your home, and they're walking. They have no buses or anything like that. They have to walk from wherever it is they live, which might be hours away or whatever, across these dusty roads and fields and so on. And when they arrive at your house, the first thing you offer them is something to drink. Oh, thank you for coming to my home. You must be thirsty. Let me offer you drinking water. So this is like a pitcher of water that you're offering your guests coming to your home. Then the next thing you offer them is washing water, to wash their hands, to wash their feet, to wash their faces from the dust and so on that they've accumulated from their journey to get to your home. So you're scooping the water up from a bowl. So this is the mudra for that. So you're offering washing water. Then the next after that is to your guests are coming to your house, and you offer them flowers. When you offer flowers, you always have a smile on your face. And when the receiver, your guest, receives the flowers, they have a smile on their face. So the flowers are symbolic of that joy, of giving, the flowers of celebration, of the beauty of nature and so on. So you're offering the flowers to them. Then the next thing that you're offering is incense. So this represents your forefingers up like this represents the stick of incense, and you're burning that. In the Indian tradition, they burn incense at the threshold of their front door, because what it's doing is it is purifying those who enter into the house. Negativity, non-virtuous beings are repulsed by that incense. They will not cross that aura of that aroma of the incense. So they will not come into the house. So we burn it outside the house, we burn it inside the house, but the function of it is to purify the atmosphere, to keep away negative spirits. When you burn that incense, the beautiful aroma that it makes and so on is uplifting and gives you, a sense of serenity and beauty and purification and so on. So that's the dupam. Then the next one is alokam, which is the light of wisdom. So it's a candle, it's a butter lamp, whatever, and so your thumb represents the flame, and your fingers together like this represent the candle or the butter lamp, that which is holding the wax or the ghee or whatever. So that light is illuminating darkness. So it's illuminating fearfulness, ignorance. The light is shining light where it's dark. So they're symbolic of wisdom or the lack of wisdom. Then the next thing is gande. Gande is perfume or scented water. So your forefinger and thumb are touching like this, representing the bottle of the perfume, and your fingers up like this is like the aroma of that scented water. Your guests coming in, have gotten hot and everything, and in those days, the smells aren't really great. You don't have deodorants and so on, but this was a means to freshen yourself up, to put this on, and it has a cooling effect. When you put the perfume on, it evaporates very quickly, so it has a cooling effect on your body. So the perfume is that you're offering your guest. Then the next one is come in, we're going to have food. Here is our meal. We're going to have this together. Here's a plate of food. So we're offering the food, and you're gathering the food. You're bringing it together like this and offering the food. You're going to have, a celebration, coming together and so on. And then during the celebration, maybe after the food, during the food, now there's some music. Now there's some rejoicing. Maybe there's some dancing. And so you're symbolizing playing a drum like this with your fingers together like this, and you're playing a drum. If you have a bell like this, you're ringing the bell, or you're playing drum, or you're playing other instruments, flutes and so on like that. So the instruments are representing that joyful celebration that you're having together. So this is if you're inviting your neighbors, your friends, your relatives into your house. So what we are doing here in this practice, we are inviting the deities who are actually within ourselves, but our recognition of those deities as guests. And we want them to stay. We would like them to stay, but we may not be stable enough to have them stay. But this offerings is to bring them in, for us to recognize them. The offering to come to our home, to be in our presence, to be within our heart center for this practice. So this is what the offerings represent. So we would say, Om Sarva Om Vajrasattva Sapariwara Argam Pratitsa Soha Om Vajrasattva Sapariwara Padyam Pratitsa Soha Om Vajrasattva Saparivara Pushpam Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Saparivara Tupam Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Saparivara Alokam Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Saparivara Gande Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Saparivara Nuitaya Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajrasattva Saparivara Shapta Pratitsa Soha. So now we do the praise. So it says Vajrasattva, Mahasattva, Vajra, embodiment of all the Tathagatas, Vajra, the primordial Samantabhadra, I prostrate to Vajrapani. So Vajrasattva, the holy enlightened being, Mahasattva, Maha means great, the great holy being. Vajra, indestructible, embodiment of all the Tathagatas. If you know one Buddha, you know all the Buddhas because they are all the same. The only difference is their activity, but their wisdom, their skillful means, their bodhicitta is all the same. So embodiment of all the Tathagatas is all within Vajrasattva, as all the other Buddhas have all the Tathagatas in them too. Vajra, the indestructible primordial Samantabhadra. So the primordial Samantabhadra is another name for Vajrasattva, for Vajradhara. And Vajradhara is the primordial Buddha, so pure it's unborn. So Samantabhadra or Vajradhara remains as just pure nature, as that absolute nature, indescribable, non-dual, non-expressible, and so on. So the one of pure nature, Samantabhadra, unborn pure nature is what Samantabhadra means. So all the Buddhas have Samantabhadra, all these meditational deities, all the deities that we see, all the enlightened ones on the lineage tree, all have Samantabhadra within their heart center. And I prostrate to Vajrapani. So Vajrapani is the bodhisattva of Dharma power. So if you go back to the page before 45, where we see the image of Vajradhara, Buddha Vajradhara at the center, and then Buddha Vajrasattva on the right side, but on the left side, our left side, is Bodhisattva Vajrapani. And Vajrapani represents that Dharma power. So you can see he looks very fierce. He's in a dancing pose. He's very powerful and so on. And he's representing that. And that is one of the 8 great bodhisattvas of human beings who are on the path to become a Buddha, is becoming the embodiment of this Dharma power. So that's why it says, I prostrate to Vajrapani, because he is the embodiment. He's showing us the way of that Dharma power, the result of that, and how we do that. So that's the praise. So we're praising Vajrasattva in this way. So then the last, on page 50, it says, envision in the heart a moon mandala, above which is the syllable hung, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra circling to the right. So this is where we're going to have to leave today, but we're going to visualize that at our heart center on a moon disk, on a lotus pedestal, is the hung syllable and the mantra of the 100-syllable mantra circling to the right. So that would be on page 51 and 52. So this is where we're going to have to leave it today, and we'll continue next week. We'll talk more about the five Buddha families, and then we'll talk more about the mantra and the practice. Anybody got any comments or questions at this time?
In terms of the mudras, there are lots of resources online. There's probably YouTube videos, and there's definitely pictures. And this is something I do. I don't know if normal people do. It can be, once you get used to it, you just have to keep on practicing and then remember the order of these things. So, the first two are water. And then there's also like hand gestures for flowers. You're showing them you're doing that. The flowers are blooming. So in my mind, okay, flowers are blooming. And then next is upon the incense. So you're just remember the sticks. But in my mind, what is incense made out of? It is made out of fire and perfume. And then the food and then the dancing. So that's just the way I did it. These little mnemonics I find really helpful.
Very good. Yes, thank you. We can go over that again next time. Is this useful? How's this landing on you, Matt?
Yeah, it's very useful. I'm excited to start incorporating this into my practice, the Vajrasattva practice.
Okay. And Jane, how about you?
Yes, I'm following along. See how it can work in.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll use that illustration. We'll talk more in detail with that next time. So it's going to take a couple of weeks, a few weeks, to really, get into all the explanations of this and everything. But this is how we learn. And then, we'll be doing the practice before too long. All right, thank you. So, Matt, will you do the dedication? So you can, on page 43 and 44, if you would do the dedication by Lord Jigten Sumgun. And everybody recite along with Matt out loud, but mute your microphones.
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root Lama and lineage Lamas, divine assembly of Yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Hum, Om, Hum, Om, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Thank you all very much. Thank everybody on YouTube. Any way we can help, just let us know. Thank you so much. See you all next week. See you tomorrow night for more on the Sutra of the Life in Full. Thank you.